Okay, we need a motion to authorize our utility attorney to consult with construction lawyers in regard to the water tower project.
You need a motion for that?
We need a motion. Moved by Belden,
Second.
seconded by Dan. How do you vote?
Crawford,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Belden,
Yes.
Amy, yes.
Okay, we're back to the normal
And then we
agenda.
want to pull that one up.
We can, if we want, if you want to go to item number 10, is that what you?
That was my suggestion.
That's related,
yeah.
Okay, we go to item number 10.
Item number 10, we're going to move it up. Water System Improvements Project, Snyder and Associates, 2021 Elevated Water Storage Tank Project Review and Approval Final Acceptance.
Who can do more to this?
Okay, and B, 2021 Elevated Water Storage Tank Project Review and Approved Pay Application. Caldwell Tanks. Number C, Water Mains Improvements Project Review and Approved Pay Application, Great Plains Contractors.
Okay, we're gonna be moving second and subject to the motion written by Dwayne.
You already got it.
Yes. Okay, so we need a motion,
I'll make a motion.
moved by Shirley,
Second.
second by Kim.
We'll call Crawford,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Belden, Amy, yes.
Okay, we'll do it. Now we'll go back to item number 5.
Okay. The USDA long-term completion bonds, Chip Schultz. A, professional services agreement for Northland Securities pertaining to 2024 USDA water revenue completion bonds. We can both of them together. And B, resolution number 2401U, resolution authorizing and approving a loan agreement and providing for the issuance and securing the payment of $6,700,000 taxable water revenue, no series 2024.
All right, so I'll just briefly review this. The item that were up on the elevated desk there, the location, this reviews some of the key features of the long-term USDA debt. The email is at the front on the cover page. The second page, Exhibit 1, the document that
Which one are you looking at?
it has
This one,
this one here.
this one.
Just like, right here.
So the second page reviews how the project costs shook out versus the funding that was provided from the short-term debt in 2022. So what's on that? It's Exhibit 1 at the top right. On column C, the costs that were funded by the 2022 short-term is listed out in that column C, totaling $6,895,000. Keep in mind that roughly $500,000 of this is being funded by CDBG dollars, so the grant monies. Column D is the final project cost number that I got from Snyder and Associates. I'll step through that because that's obviously very important. In row 5, the final cost for the water tower from Snyder was $2,044,100. Row 6 in column D, final cost for the water main, $3,947,117. When you look at this is construction only, and when you look at those two costs, the construction cost is about $98,000, $291,000 higher than the original bid due to change orders. What changes when you compare column C, the original funded amount, to column D, you don't need the contingency anymore, given that you're looking at a final project cost. So the total for construction, and then considering the contingency change, your cost change is lower by $196,709. That's in column E, row 9. Engineering is listed out below that. And then at the bottom are project-related legal services, and the CDBG administrative fee. So in the dark blue shading in row 21, overall, the project cost for the final cost is $6,683,291,000, or roughly $211,885 less than the funding provided from the 2022 short-term debt. So that $211,885 then is pulled down at the bottom of the page in the light blue shading. From ASH, you had about $21,000 in interest earnings from this short-term debt in 2021. So you have $232,885 of cash that you currently have on hand in your bank account to apply toward the financing. The next page lays out Exhibit 2, the USDA debt service costs. There are two components to the USDA debt. The original financing amount, $4,978,000. That's in columns C, D, and E at 1.5%. And this all assumes the debt goes out 40 years. You have the right, of course, to pay any of this debt off early at any time if you wish to do so. Columns F, G, and H, that's the subsequent financing from USDA. That's at 2% at $1,722,000. The total debt service between the two is in column I. And this assumes that it goes the full 40-year term. The next page is just the sources and uses of funds. This shows the cash on hand being applied as a source of funds. So you have the two USDA financing components in the columns in the middle of the page. They total $6,700,000. That's the public hearing that was held in 2022. You have the sources of cash right below that under other sources of funds. The 211 in the column on the right side, $211,885. That's proceeds that you have on hand remaining from the 2022 project notes, the short-term debt. And then you have the $21,000 of interest earnings. I've assumed that's applied toward the higher rate debt. That's one you want to minimize, obviously, because it's at the higher rate. And then if you look under uses, $6,700,000, that's the payoff of the 2022 short term. And the USDA debt requires a reserve fund. The reserve fund for the 2%, the R2, what it's called is R2 loan, that at $62,616, that's 1 year's debt service. That's fully funded. I would point out the footnote at the bottom of the page, the reserve fund on the 1.5% loan, you have enough monies to fund that at $89,014. That total reserve fund listed in the footnote, you have 10 years to fund that. You're in a really good position because you have most of it funded upfront on the closing date of financing. That's essentially what was intended, and you're able to do that because you didn't have significant change orders. So the reserve fund on the R1 loan, the $4,978,000 in total is $166,068. That's in the footnote. You have $89,000 of that funded. So over the next 10 years, to fully fund that, you have another roughly $77,000 that would have to be transferred with a monthly transfer to that reserve fund to have it fully funded. Then you have that funded, and then you can make the last year's debt service payments from that reserve fund instead of your water funds. It doesn't disappear. You have it as money to use. So that's just the kind of the summary of how the financing amounts are arrived at and how the dollars are intended to be used. So I'll be brief on that and happy to answer your questions.
Chip, this is just for the minutes for citizens to understand this, interest savings, just a ballpark, just a range on what the bond market would be for a revenue bond versus the USDA funding.
So this sheet, that has the Excel spreadsheet on the first page, a separate sheet from what we just went over. That reviews as a hypothetical comparison, and it's what was emailed today. So the first page, it's basically just a repeat of what we talked about for the USDA debt. it has the USDA debt in two tranches totaling $6 million. And then the second page is estimated debt service on what a current bond market offering would be.
6 million of interest costs?
So the cost difference with, and these are cushioned rates for a bond market offering, so it's a little conservative.
So
But the difference over time is roughly $6,343,000
are you comfortable?
by proceeding with the USDA debt.
Are you comfortable if we cite this in the motion as an estimate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I got the pricing scale from the head of our underwriting and trading desk, who's based in Milwaukee, and he underwrites 10 to 15 bond issues a week. He knows the market.
No, I'm just saying, it's even just at a soft level to say that, you know, the utility board, the prior utility board planned this project, put it together, and by doing this in the way they did, they saved $6 million in interest costs. Now, if we paid off early, that'd be great, but at least, you know.
That's right. And I have early payoff information when we talk about user rates, that I'll get into that. But this is what your options are today. What's a little bit skewed is your USDA rates are rates that you were able to lock in 2020 and 2022 on the two loans. The bond market rates are as of today in 2024. But that's the reality of what your options are going to have to deal with. So.
Ballpark 6 million. Ben, what percentage of total water lines were replaced with this project? About 50%?
That's a good rough number.
Just about, okay. So can we put that in this?
Okay, we want it to be, tell me exactly what the number. But he does it, okay, she has the numbers. Okay, we can get
So it's 6,
6%, and what the number?
$6,342,572.
Okay, you got it?
and then it replaced about half, 50% of the water lines in town.
6%, okay, you got it? Okay, that's on item number 5. We need a motion on item number 5 for A and B. Moved by Ken. Second by Billman.
Crawford, Sherman,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Melvin.
Yes.
Amy, yes. Number 6, power purchase agreement review authorization.
We need a motion to authorize Chip and Horace to kind of talk to our utility attorney and what you want, Steve Stem.
Tim Whipple at Allers is who does a lot of this type of work, utilities, or electric and he's at the state level, right, or he used to be?
He used to be I think, general counsel for Mid-American Energy, or counsel for them. And first, for context, I think the purpose is really to show, do you have other options if you were to pursue your own locally owned solar panels or wind turbines, those types of things? Is that permitted under your agreement? And Pat, help me out here. Is that permitted under your agreement with Simeca and Sipco?
Is this permitted?
That's what.
Is that what you're asking me right now? Well, the way that Sitco contract is written, if we take an average of our use, we're only allowed to have 10% of that from an outside source. And that's where the wind turbine comes in. So, I mean, that's in the power contract agreement we have with Sitco. It's on page 28, actually.
So you're saying if we produce more power, then you have to give it back or buy a percentage?
Well, they just don't allow it.
They just don't allow it.
Tim would be the guy that'd be able to say, but if you do A, B, and C, there might be a way to do it.
So the motion really is to authorize Chip and Forrest to communicate with Stem and do it.
Yeah, and to review that agreement.
Right.
For the
I
Sitco.
I think you probably want to have a call with, perhaps Kim would want to participate, obviously Ash and Pat, Sarah, with Forrest and I and Tim Whipple on a call just because I think the board needs to hear it really directly from him. So this is legal, it's not force-nized ballgame, so.
That's fine.
And not just the SIP program, but the Xenia one as well.
What's that?
But the Xenia one as well, for the
Okay.
water. And whether that's Tim or somebody else on the water, I don't care, but
Is the
I
water?
think Dwayne worked on them. Obviously, your
Dwayne,
choice
did
who
he
you
take
work
off?
with.
When we could have.
Okay. You took it off. What?
So up to you who you want
So
to.
you wanna have one call with Tim on the power with the agreement and the folks you mentioned, and then one call on the water with Dwayne, not Tim, to discuss those things. That's fine. I think
your,
that's fair.
I think that's the option
Yeah.
that's in front of you.
Yes. So we'll get that board to make a motion to give his authorization to deal with Tim and Dwayne, and then scheduling the conference and all the stuff. That's an easy one.
The really tricky part, I think, Pat, is the power agreement, and it's not really a tremendously public document. And we'll
Yeah, that's
try to mildly state that.
I think Tim would know a lot more about that. He's dealt with this before. So, but you're right, it's not something that we just put out there for the general public to look at.
So who takes the lead on this, first of all? Second of all, how do we clarify what, who calls Tim and says, we need to get you the agreement before we have the call, because there's no sense of having the call without the agreement being reviewed ahead of time.
I can reach out to him, get it set up.
Is that covered in your?
you bet.
No, I'm asking, is it supposed to be?
I
You guys
think
don't
we
work
have
for
no
free. We
idea
do.
what direction this is
We
gonna
don't have
go. I'll
to
be
file
totally
the
candid.
agreement anywhere.
No, it's
It's all,
kept confidential with the superintendent, so
I mean, the
now
board
we're
can
giving
look
the
at-
authorization.
The board can look at the agreement we have, but it has to be when we're in session.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there's no sense in us setting up a conference call with all of these folks that Tim Whipple has a chance to look at the agreement. And I believe that guy, when I talked to him a long time ago, a year ago, he already has us under, whatever that's called, when you're a client of a lawyer, huh? What?
Retainer?
No,
Client confidentiality.
something like that, where the city has Dorsey Whitney, the utilities has Alders County. There's only two of those folks, right, in Des Moines?
Yes.
So they're kind of separate. That's, Tim looked us up and he did a verification of that. So, but I'm saying who takes that and gets that agreement to Tim if that's all true and still relevant? Because I don't have the call. I just don't want to lose a month like we did on what I talked about earlier.
After the motion, Chip has authorization and he's
I'll
gonna.
try to get it set up for next week.
If
I don't know,
you got, I'm just saying, as long as Tim has a chance to
He's
review.
trying to get it set up next
Yes.
week for a call.
Yeah.
I'll be
You'll
gone.
get the whole thing set up.
Okay, gone?
I won't be back till the 28th, so if you wanna do
No,
something
go ahead.
else.
No,
We'll wait till after the 28th.
yeah, absolutely. Just let him have the agreement, is what I'm getting at. Whoever got it, you should have the okay. You guys should be able to get him the okay.
That's the motion that I'm gonna.
I have a copy of it.
No, I know
We
that.
can email it to you.
No, I know, but I'm saying, what could happen is, he says, you guys need to be a client of ours, or we want an engagement, or all this mumbo jumbo. Then we're into another month, right? That's what I'm getting at. So,
I don't know who's gonna win.
all I'm getting at is, should the motion include, the intent to enter into an engagement agreement if necessary? Something like that, to give you more clearance. And maybe he says we don't need that.
I think we'll have to get input from him on that. There's no way Forrest and I can answer that.
But I think it's fine to include that as part of the motion.
Yeah,
If he
so then-
wants that, then we already have authorization.
Yeah, then we're not sitting here spinning our wheels. She's enjoying her time, not worried about this until the 28th. And then when she's back, we'll have a call, we have the agreement, we can, hit the ground running.
Okay, we need a motion.
Okay, what's the motion?
The motion is to do what you just said.
That's what I'm saying.
That you give an authorization to Chip and Forrest to talk to Tim and Dwayne, and also the authorization include allowing them to talk about the agreement that you're talking.
and with the intent as needed for an engagement agreement. Okay?
That's
Okay.
much.
I mean, I'm throwing that out there. If anybody else has other
Yeah.
feedback or input, that's fine. Okay.
Who moved?
I'll make it. Go ahead. I'll make that.
Belden? Second?
I'll say,
Second by Kim.
doesn't
Second.
matter.
Kim second. How do you vote?
Crawford,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Allen.
Yep.
Amy, yes.
7.
Hold on. Let me know where we are. That was-
Yeah.
6.
Six
Financial.
first.
Okay, financial advisor Chip of Northern Securities.
On 6 yet, Forrest, you needed something from us to pursue, this gets you what you need to pursue a water study as well, correct?
Yes, yeah, I mean,
So
that's,
you'll be able to bring us an engagement agreement or an estimate of cost?
yes, after we have that phone call, one of the phone calls is with Tim about the
Yeah.
power. One of the phone calls is with Dwayne about the water, depending on how those conversations go. Then yes, then I can be at the next meeting and say, okay, it will work to do whatever those agreements say, and that will allow us to take the next step, possibly, potentially, hopefully, to look at other sources or other
Alternatives.
alternatives, same thing.
And we may do all this work and come back with absolutely nothing. You two customers can't say we're not trying, right?
Okay. 7.
The financial advisor Chip of
Okay.
Northern Securities.
Okay, so the bound handout that is at your places, I'll reference that. And then this will get into a little bit of this information perhaps later on, about the water cost for the housing development. So, the loose sheet that's inserted into the bound document, that's basically a summary page. So it's on bigger paper just so it's easier to read. So I'll go through a couple of key pages on the bound document itself. Behind the cover page, for just some history, the page numbers are at the bottom right of each page. Page 2 of 21, this lays out the bulk water cost on a per 1,000 gallon basis that Xenia has charged Stuart over time, going back 8 years roughly to 2016. The row 6 shows the percentage increase, and this is the Xenia charging Stuart, what their percentage change has been. If you aggregate those 8 years of rate changes, they total roughly 58%. During that same time period, your local charges to the Stuart Utilities water customers has been about 21% in row 10. A differential there of roughly 37%. The point in showing this is really to try to lay out, you've tried to mitigate or minimize the cost increase to your local water customers versus the cost that you've had for Xenia on the bulk water cost. Ben's been good about pointing out and there's not necessarily a margin that you have to maintain because meaning the most recent increase from Xenia in column I is roughly 11.3%. You don't necessarily need to increase your local rates that much unless you want to maintain the same profit margin. And the reason is you have other costs for operating water besides the bulk water cost, and that cost and those other costs, employee salaries, so forth, hasn't gone up as much as the Xenia cost has. Second page is what your local utility customers have paid to Stuart Utilities in terms of their your local rate adjustments going back to the same time period, 2016. Cumulatively, it's roughly 21% for the rate adjustment. Most notable, you didn't have a rate adjustment in 2023 to your local water utility customers, even though you had one from Xenia. So that's, somewhat of a benefit that you can point to your local water utility customers. There's your differential again, 37%. In column I, the rate adjustment in 2022, that broke out the amount that was charged to, in row 7, the mid-tier per 1,000 gallons charge. That was adjusted by roughly 25%, mainly to focus on trying to shift more of the cost burden to commercial customers as opposed to residential. So that's kind of the purpose of the gray shading there in column I. The next page, exhibit 3, or page 4 of 21 at the bottom right. These are local utility rates for, I think, some of the local utilities we talked about at the last meeting. Your current rates are at the top left table. Penora rates are at the top center table. It's notable, right under the box, Penora has an automatic 5% rate increase they put in place every year on June 15th. And it's indefinite. Every year, June 15th, no
So
matter
they're
what.
not even revisiting this every year.
I bet they are, but that's what's in their ordinance. I'm sure they're looking at it regularly, even with that.
And they purify their own water.
I'm not sure what they do.
No, I'm just
The water treatment. So they have a base charge. Their availability charge is $46. In the top of that table, your monthly meter charge, comparable charge is 23, or half that amount. What's a really key difference too, look at how their higher usage tiers, what they're charged on a per 1,000 gallon basis, $25 per 1,000 gallons versus your $6.20 rate for the folks that are over $1.6 million.
So if you, just a question, if you took our usage and applied Penora's rates to that, I mean, because all of these are mutually exclusive, right? They all have their own,
They all have their own.
so
And that's something too to look at. This is nice, I think maybe as a discussion point, but there's so many other factors that go into these various utility rates. When did they build their water plant? What's their water source? If you can get the cost structure of Greenfield or Winterset, that's nice, but that's not possible.
So
You know,
What
you
is
don't
that?
have a lake like Winterset does.
what is our, not yet, what is our average usage? I mean, where do our customers fall, right? They all fall under the first 10,000 gallons, right? Sarah, would that be, we looked at this last year, like 90% of the households or 80% of the households,
Family of 4 usually uses about 4,000 gallons.
4,000, okay, so our water rates are,
You're less right now than Penora for, I've got 5,000 for a sample bill there in row 12. You're less than Penora right now.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that work yet.
So it's right below each table are sample water
Yeah, I'm
bills
sorry.
for each respective utility. And this is, I want to be sure to,
This is the one that we were just talking about, that was just, yeah.
this is your current rate structure that was put in place in 2022. Penora's, you see the effective date of the light gray shaded row in each. Penora was June of 23. It might go up next month here in June of 24. Greenfield is June of 23. Winterset, the bottom left is January of 2020. Guthrie Center is October of 2023. And then I have 2 rural water districts, which are, I think, less applicable, but they're area water
So
providers.
the outlier, if I'm following what you did here, is Guthrie Center has
They're quite low.
they're half of what we would be, right?
They are.
And otherwise, everything else is pretty closer together, right?
They're not too far off. You're right.
We're the highest, but not by much.
You are not the highest. I think Penora is the highest.
Oh, I was looking at, so I'm not reading this right. I'm at on row 10 or 11, I'm at 6602, 6560.
You're lower by $1. You're higher by $1
Yeah.
on 3,000. But if you go to 5,000 gallons, you're lower.
Yeah, it's a mix, okay. I was just trying to think, you were trying to say we're primary users go to 5,000.
Right. It depends what you want to focus on, or who's your user for. I mean, that's why different tiers are shown.
So is there something in the fee structure of Guthrie Center that makes their lower usage customers have to pay less and their higher usage customers?
I think they're trying to encourage water conservation. That's what you get from that kind of a user structure.
Okay.
but I charge more when you use more. You guys are the inverse of that.
They probably just got the valve turned off almost the whole way and then just started flushing.
Now,
Lowest water pressure.
this is just residential for Guthrie Center. They have a whole separate they have their rate ordinance is about 3 pages. So
What's that?
their rate ordinance for Guthrie Center is about 3 pages. I've only focused on residential for them on this page. So
So.
I don't think you wanted to go into that much detail on their user rates.
No,
So,
no,
at
thank
least
you
for
very
this
much.
point.
This is awesome. This page is
And
great.
they have different tiers for multi-unit apartment buildings. It's fairly complicated, really.
So, Mark, this is SMU at June 15th of 2022, and we've done 1% since that point, right? Last year was 1%? Or
Last year was nothing. That's what I mentioned earlier.
No, we did a one,
More than that.
no, we did 1%, 3%.
Last year.
Yeah, we did 1%
I
on.
don't think there was a change last year.
Yeah,
I don't,
We didn't do anything last year, so I was like, no,
we did, we did.
you did something in 2022. You didn't do anything last year.
you sure?
I
I've
thought
got
we did. I
the
thought
rate
that's what
sheet.
Craig, I could have sworn Craig made that motion to do 3% on higher consumers and 1%, basically our 90%. we
That's
raised
what was
1%.
done in 2022.
Okay, all right, that
There
didn't,
was,
I
it's,
thought it was sooner, more recent than
I'm good.
that. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
No kidding, yeah.
so, anything else on that page or? The next page, exhibit, page 5 of 21, it might be handy, that's the same thing as the larger sheet. So what I've put together are, the options are described in the left column. There are 4 options for this kind of initial review. Option A keeps the monthly minimum the same as it is currently. Does a 4% adjustment in 2024 for all usage tiers per 1,000 gallons, and then reflects an annual 3% per 1,000 gallons change in the future. All future monthly minimum bills stay the same. So the spreadsheet's laid out in the center under the kind of the medium blue historic and current water rates. All of that material for each of the scenarios is all the same because it's your existing user rates and your historic user rates. What's different is what's under the gray shaded heading, beginning in column K. That's what differs between the 4 different scenarios. Option B changes the monthly minimum by about $1, which is 4%. It has a lower change on the per 1,000 gallons rate class, and then reflects 3% annually in the future. Option C keeps the monthly minimum the same, reflects a 2% first tier, the kind of the lower usage tiers for the first 10,000 gallons, which that's your residential basically. And then 5% for commercial for the second tier, 10,000 to 1,000,006 gallons. And then 2% annually for a future rate adjustment. So these are all carried out under the usage categories and tiers at the right. And you can kind of just see what the various impact is. These aren't people's bills necessarily, these are just the rates per each usage category. Then option D, I wanted to show this because I think you as a board might take heat from time to time from folks that say you should just keep user rates the same. And this option is laid out to show that that's not frankly financially sustainable. It's really intended to give you cover as a board, or you can point to for why you're making a user rate change.
And I'm not asking for new information. The old information that we used to look at to set those 3-1 rates that you were saying you remembered as well, and Kim, you would remember. Do we have that information? Because I don't recall the usage splits. Like there were for you guys, just so we could go back and look at that. You remember what I'm talking about? You guys did all this work, put
Yeah,
this stuff
there's
together, consolidated it all, and it was a great summary of information for new board members and frankly, lateral members.
It had like 600 some in the first year. There was 1 to 10,000 gallons. 100 and some in the second tier, 10,000 to 1,000,006 gallons. And then there's 1 Rose Acres in the top tier.
How do you remember that?
Because I did
Yeah.
it. Sarah did it.
But the
and I-
point with that rate deal, the split was we raised the higher users at a higher rate versus and Neil, I know you don't like that.
That's the option C that's in front of you is an option that takes more of that approach, where it takes the second tier up 5%, everything else. The minimum stays the same, the other tiers are 2%.
But we could go 3 and 1 to copy what we did in the past.
Which one, Glenn?
I'm just saying that's not on here, but
I don't see anything historic based on the data that's on this page in front of you where you did 3 and 1.
see, that's what I'm saying. I know we did that. Am I hallucinating, Shirley? We voted on a 3%.
I thought we did too, but we didn't have it, you know.
Can you look at prior minutes? or
Yeah.
something?
Right, I was thinking it would have been on a resolution and they could look up a resolution in 2023 to find that
Did you
out.
remember this discussion? And I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's correct. I distinctly remember. I can
We'll
remember
look
that.
it up.
We didn't want to raise it at all last year.
We'll look it up.
Right.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, because
We could be wrong.
I think you were the one that brought it up.
You got 65%, again, I'll be brief, my soapbox, 65% of the people in this town, on an LMI basis, I'm not for raising their rates. They gotta go pay $4 for our gas, and so we can spend $2 trillion in deficit spending with our corrupt governments. I'm sorry, they don't have money to shed like that, so.
Right.
But I still thought we landed on a 3-1 based on a user tier. And I just swear to God, we did that.
Usually.
It just never got implemented.
I get it home, so I mean, don't.
I thought it was a 5-0 vote.
I don't know if it was last.
I don't think it was last year.
So if we voted that way and there was a motion,
The records I have is 2022 unless I fell asleep last year.
so
I kind of remember you saying something, well, we raised it here and these people cannot afford it, you know, like you're saying now. So why don't we skip it this year and check next year?
but I swear there was a motion of 3-1.
I don't remember, Sarah doesn't, Chip doesn't, but
Surely
it'll
does
be
too.
wrong.
You remember this?
Surely.
Well, you would have to, like you said, you'd have to go back in
We'll
the
look it
minutes
up.
of last
Let's look at the
year.
minutes.
Yeah, we
But
will.
we do it all at the same time.
We have to have a
Yeah.
solution.
So, yeah, you'll have to look for a resolution.
We have to have a
Is
solution.
it possible we made the motion, the resolution never got enacted? Is that possible?
Well,
No.
Okay, I'm just.
No, that would be hard.
Okay.
Would be hard.
Anyway, so I thought that's where we landed was a 3-1, but anyway, whatever. So that was the context, Neil.
No, I get it. My thought on the differential, it's not that I'm necessarily against the differential. It's having a goal in mind long-term of where you want that all to balance out.
Yeah.
So that every year you're not doing that same thing and then you're getting way higher on one end and you're still, like, have a goal in mind of what you're looking for in 10
Totally.
years.
Yeah, and that's why this sheet that Chip put together is great, and that's why these guys doing this additional work with Tim Whipple and Pat Bent, I mean, going after some alternatives so you can try to set more of a business plan. I agree with you.
Didn't you say Greenfield does that? They had a projection that they raised it and stayed steady with it.
Nora,
Oh,
that has
Nora.
one. They do a 5% rate adjustment each year. And that is locked in as what they approved. I don't know, they approved it years ago, but the board doesn't have to take action on it. It's 5% June 15th.
It just takes effect if they want to go higher than or
Yeah.
go, if they want to change it, they'd have to.
Right, they have to, right.
So do you want to think about something like that then?
Yeah, we just got this. I'd like to look at it. There's no way. I mean,
I don't think, no action is being requested, but so the detail behind each scenario, I'll just maybe walk through one.
Sure.
Behind the first tab, and I'll really briefly do this out of respect for your time. So page 7 of 21, this lays out, like in row 6, these are the historic user rates in gray, the proposed user rates in the gray, the green and the blue shading, with the percentages listed right above that table. Number of accounts is in row 14. Sample bills are in row 13, 14, 15, 16. Operating revenue is in row 18, 19, 20. What's in yellow is it reflects no rate adjustment last year. Maybe that, we'll see if that is the case or what happened there, but I'll tell you this, I think the numbers bear that out, because the actual revenue numbers from the navy blue shaded heading for this fiscal year 23-24, you only have a 1.25%. This is estimated, of course, because the fiscal year's not done. Revenue increase for that year. Look at the prior year, it was 7.5%, 5% the year before that in row 17. So that 1 year without a rate adjustment, assuming that's actual the case, is hard to sustain when you have Xenia going up. And Xenia is only part of your cost structure, Xenia going up 10 or 11%.
So, Forrest, is that, going back to that contract, there's two things here, I'm sorry. So one of them is these speed cameras that the council so generously shared with us. Can you give us a 30-second, this is dead update?
You guys have the email that I had inquired with the guys from Genoptic and Steve Brick. Did everybody get that email? Sarah sent it forward. I think essentially it's unclear whether there is speed camera revenue until 2020, I think July 1 of 2026. So that's because of the change in the legislation that was approved last month.
And that was about 150 to 180,000.
I'm not sure if the governor signed that yet, by the way. So
Yeah, I mean, like, well, it was a bipartisan deal, but that was 150, 180,000 dollars of free cash. That would have been great for us. These other things, we're trying to reduce costs by doing things differently, but this one would have been a revenue generator, and it wouldn't hit anybody in town.
right.
Anyway, sorry.
Page 8 of 21, this lays out your operating expenditures. I broke out the Xenia cost in row 27 from all other water costs in row 28. Total operating expenses are shown in row 33. Your net operating income, row 34. Considering the no rate adjustment in 2023, in that yellow shaded area, look at how your operating income is basically was 536,000 and 561, dropped down. It expected to drop down for this current fiscal year. Net revenues for debt services, the gray shaded row 42. Debt service is below that. Your 2 tranches of the USDA debt, row 46. Debt service coverage is in the gray shading row 53. Net income after debt service is below that. And then the following page is kind of how your capital expenditures are paid from bond proceeds and that type of thing. So I'll just point out row 67, that's the annual surplus after taking into account capital expenditures. Something to think about with that surplus that's available, and this is listed out on the footnote on this page. When you have an operating surplus in those years, you have different options of what you can do with that money. I've assumed capital expenditures in row 59 that are frankly higher than what you've had historically. What you can perhaps do maybe you start to replace water lines from cash on hand instead of financing them. I've assumed only 75,000. You've historically, the water fund's not really made any capital expenditures until fiscal year 21-22, if you look at row 59. This is using the categorization for capital outlays in your audits. You've got a lot in those 3 fiscal years in FY 22, 3, and 4 because of your water tower and your water main projects.
Are we due for a joint meeting at all with the council?
We were waiting for Chip and Forrest to get done with the presentation, and then we'll have Julie.
Okay. I'm just saying this would be something that would be,
What presentation?
This water rate and.
can we just set one in June? Is that okay? Can we set one in June?
We can?
Okay. The reason I ask is, I think this is a great idea. I mean, to your point, is pay cash on hand for things, if that's possible. But then also if they're doing a street project, I don't know if you guys have street projects or whatever, but maybe. Well, right, so I'm just saying, are there water and electric expenses we need to look at the same time?
Yeah, we have stuff.
Maybe.
That's gonna be 2 years down
Yeah,
the road, White Pole Road.
if we.
Probably need to talk about it now versus after.
No, you're exactly right, but yeah.
So that blue shaded row, let me just isolate that. And you can see how that trends positive going forward. 273,000 in the light blue shading, row 67. It's 313,000 with the assumed capital expenditure shown above. Those could be higher. You could make extra payments on the USDA debt. That's up to you. So kind of think about that. If I can, let me just highlight this row. The blue shading, that goes to 313,000 at fiscal year 29-30. If you flip behind the second tab, page 13 of 21, please. And then compare that same row. This is option B. At that far right fiscal year, you're at 356,000 for the income after expenditures and debt service and capital outlays are considered, or roughly, 43,000 higher than option A. That's not as meaningful, but let's look then at behind tab 3, please. Similar page for option C, page 17 of 21. If you look at that same comparable row, the blue shading in row 67, that net annual surplus is reduced because this has a lower, it has 2% rate adjustments instead of 3. So it's still positive, but it is diminished. Then behind tab 4, and this is the last thing I'll cover. Page 21 of 21, the final page, behind the back cover. Page 21, the same blue shaded row, that annual surplus. If you have no user rate adjustments going forward. This is what shows the diminished annual surplus if you don't adjust rates.
So we don't need to raise rates till 2030 when we got a problem. But we're still,
If you're planning for a diminishing annual surplus is a good thing,
Well, that's
go
what
right
the federal
ahead.
government does. It seems like they're doing a good job.
So the point of showing that is it's good to think now about multiple years ahead, and I'd at least look at option C for rate adjustments and not doing anything that's maybe not the best approach.
Thanks for all that.
Thank you, Chip.
So
No, you're fine.
this is information that Forrest put together on housing phase 4. Wambo phase 3 is the 4th overall housing phase. And I wanted to just offer this out as, I think the utility board is still, you don't really need to, but to me at least, there's not a decision that's been made in terms of cost of participation in the water utility portion of housing phase 4. Scenario D breaks out 100% cost participation. Scenario A, and they're in order, I know they're in an odd order, but forgive me. Scenario A is 100% of the water loop out by the school, a third of the base, and a third of the change order. Scenario B is a third of all. Scenario C is half of all. So the lower table below the dashed line, that at least isolates, for discussion purposes, what water rates we need to do if the utility contributes either D or A. The purpose, those are, I think, probably the higher two and maybe are the most likely based on what the utility board's done in the past for cost participation. Again, the decision's up to you as a board. if you, scenario D, annually, the cost without interest is roughly 20,000. Interest is 33,000. Scenario A,
I just found it.
that's 16,000 with no interest, and with interest, those are flipped. But what does that mean in terms of a percentage of the annual revenues? That's shown in the blue sheet in the center, the bottom center of the page. So just trying to get you this as an educated background piece to evaluate how you approach the housing, the water cost of the most recent housing phase. And it's relevant because if you're looking at user rates.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our money for 40 years.
Number 8, non-union employee wages.
Okay, this is,
So,
But back on this, real quick. The reason we have to raise the rates, right, is because we spent all of our reserve cash flow on the bond we just approved, right?
It's a whole myriad of reasons, I think.
Just saying, it's not just.
The reason I'm providing it really is it's a future decision for the board. And it's in the mix of all the other material that's in here. It's provided because I think it's a future decision that's in front of you.
Right, but insurance went up the same dollar amount as scenario A, and we didn't raise rates. That's all I'm getting at. So,
okay,
yeah, number 8.
okay, we have a sheet of the city hall employees and utility employees. We already, the union employees, it's 4 people, Dustin Foster, Fippen, Hayden Fippen, Nelson Cleveland, Tim Scott. Those not really subject to the discussion. The remaining employees is city hall and bag, we call them non-union. The budget that we had prepared for the next year include 4% wage increase. I usually say we give 45% increase would be recommended, but that's a joke that I always make every year. But what we included in the budget is 4%.
so how much is that total dollars? What percent of the numbers on the left here?
Yes, if you take the annual salary, multiply by 4, that's a dollar amount. That's what I include in the budget every year. I consider the cost of living.
And that's the city,
City hasn't decided. City will be one way. We give the union 7%, but that's union discussion. We can't, it's not apples to apples. So that's annual talk about the union and non-union. We're done with the union too. I don't know if Pat has anything to say.
I think you covered it all, Raj.
Okay, so like I said, you can be bold, but please don't get this. Any question?
I always wonder how many towns that are around here give the insurance and all of that the same as we do. I mean, we've got a great package for these guys, and they're worth it, there's no doubt about it. But I just always wonder how we as a community can continue every year giving pay raises at this rate. Every year and every year.
I understand.
are you recommending to not do something with insurance or something else and then, and do a higher raise or?
At one time, we talked years ago about having them pay a percentage of their insurance. A lot of companies do.
Oh, I pay $1,000 a month for health insurance, yep. So, I hear you there.
I pay 600 and something a month for health insurance.
So is there an agreement at 3% or are we wanting to wait till the city does something? Or years ago, there used to be a joint meeting between the two groups and they kind of, but then we went away from that.
Yeah,
So,
you were there.
yeah, we went away from that. So it's up to you.
Get away because we have the union people too.
Yeah. So I don't know what,
Everybody leaves that up to the board, and I
Yeah.
consider the budget 4%.
Yeah.
You know my statement every year for the last 30 years. I consider 4% cost for them. Things are getting expensive.
I couldn't.
But- Like I said, I can see the Shirley point, and I can see both sides, and I'm the liaison here between the board and the council and the utility and the employees. And we have good groups, employees, we really have, you all doing the best.
So, what's everybody think? When you guys want to wait till next month? We haven't had a chance, I mean, we just got this last night, so you wanna look at it for a month or?
All up to you.
Well, I think you can't ask the employees what they would think because no, they don't want to pay anything
Right.
on their insurance.
Right.
That's just
So
flat.
that's what I was wondering, is it better to do, a 5% raise and do an 80-20 on insurance or something like that? Is it, or 90-10? Or get that put together to see what it would, how much that would cost?
I think
versus-
if you mess with their insurance, you're gonna lose a lot of people. Cause right now, with everything so expensive, yes, I pay 600 and some dollars a month for mine. But I couldn't go anywhere else and get it that cheap.
And that's a fact.
So that's why, what was the increase in health insurance this last year? What was the percentage of that?
It was back on 4%. I can look it up.
It used to be $1,000, $1,100 a month per person. Ballpark.
It's 1,600.
Yes,
1,600 per person per month.
Right.
Yeah, so if
We
you,
get it through the union.
No, I'm
And
with you.
it's the same price no matter whether you're a 20-year-old single
it's a
person
flat fee.
or you have 8 children.
One person or 20 on the same plan.
I mean,
As Kim said,
Lido, right?
it is the only thing that helping us keeping the employees.
So
we've got one person here that does not even take the health insurance. We've got, so
is it better we just do a 3% raise and we can all agree on that and go home and leave the health insurance the way it is?
It's up to you, I think.
Or do we want more time? I'm just looking.
The people we have already.
I think if you look at it as a total package, it's kind of a wash. Because unless if you're just gonna make them pay for insurance, you're not giving them a raise, you're cutting.
right,
It's like cutting.
right.
Yeah, that's what you have to look
And
at.
so if we maintain the insurance the way we are, then I think we do raises accordingly.
I mean, and
Just look
what's,
at it as a total package.
what some of these are getting for an annual salary, I wouldn't take the job. I couldn't live on it. I mean, like, without any of this other stuff right there, I could not live on that. I couldn't.
We really
That's
makes,
the point of my
Oh,
question.
okay.
Right.
City
That's
pays the
utility.
other half.
Okay.
She makes double that.
She makes double that,
Yes.
and she does too.
that's
And,
a utility.
Well, I knew he did.
Yeah, these are all, you gotta double them to get to the right number. These are already.
That's just for sure.
Neil has a good.
The point of my question about how much the health insurance increase, so to me,
I am now.
if we were seeing a 15% increase in the cost of insurance or something really high, that to me would impact what I would how I would be looking at the increase in the annual salary. I would say, well, we had in the total package, we had such a big number increase in one part of the package. So we should probably, in my opinion, scale back on one of the other buckets so that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that the overall package, but if you're saying insurance, total costs were up 4%, which seems pretty reasonable in today's age,
That's what.
insurance costs.
You know, another way to do this is, you know, if you went with 3% with raises like we've done, you could say every dollar go forward that the insurance goes up is incurred by the employee. It would be a consistent treatment if you wanted to do that.
If you.
But that's a separation, like you said, then you get into a separation of, you know, how things are handled because they come here and they take a job and they're used to that being part of a package. But the school, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to say this badly, but I've heard that the school's insurance, that all the employees have to pay for it, right? So I'm just saying it's,
My perspective on it is that we've got longstanding employees that this has been the structure going for a long time. So to change it mid-game at any time, it's
without
more
any
than just
notice,
it's more than just a one-night conversation about
Yep.
maybe we should do something. It's probably a conversation that maybe we want to implement something over a 5 or 10 year period and figure out what exactly we're trying to figure out and implement that and not. And maybe there's some grandfathering that goes into employees that have been here for X number of years.
Yep.
So that there's not this rocking of the boat that you get this exodus of employees because we value our employees here. So
I think it's hard to do things differently for the different employees, because then you've got.
And that's what I always go.
I started out getting my insurance, I didn't pay a penny when I started out, 40 years ago at my first job.
We attract
And over
our.
time, we started paying part of the premium. We went from a 10% copay to a 20% copay, and then we had a big deductible. I mean, it happens over time. You can't do some employees and not the other.
Right.
That would be a nightmare to figure out, keep track of, and just, it's not gonna go over well if you treat some employees different than others,
so I think
regardless of how long they've been here.
Absolutely. So
make a motion of 3%, leave the benefits alone.
that's a
Is
motion.
that a motion? I'm asking.
Yeah,
I don't want to, I'm asking. I just want to get on with the issue. This is always a
Yes,
longer conversation. If we, like you said, you know, if we started discussing this, you know, a couple times, 3 times before, it wouldn't be right.
Okay, let's make a motion, see. Sligo said,
And leave benefits as is
Yeah.
in the motion.
moved by Golden,
I'll second.
seconded by Dan.
We'll call Crawford,
yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Jones,
No,
Belden,
Yes.
Amy, I abstain.
This is what I want to avoid.
Motion carried. So thank you all, Sligo said, thank you on behalf of the employees. Okay.
Okay, number 9, annual payments to City of Stuart. A, City Hall buildings, $35,000. B, wind turbine income lost to city for 2023, $4,000. C, Wambled Addition Phase 1, $6,336. And D, All Saints Addition Project, $18,459.
That's a standard every year. Number B, wind turbine, that's the last one.
So we can approve these all at once.
Yeah, we are good with that. So we need a motion. Something like that. Moved by Kim. Need a second.
I'll second.
Second by Shirley.
Crawford,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes,
Belden,
Yes.
AB, yes.
Go to 11.
Budget amendment fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024.
We didn't have a major really work on the organization, everything is fine. I'm just trying to plug in all these numbers with Chairman, the 6.7 million, all these things are gonna get it into balance budget on the utility side. But the operation went okay, we didn't exceed. We just finished the budget earlier than some. You know, I didn't think that we would be done with that one of projects that soon.
It seems like everything other than, you know, what we already know.
Yeah,
It's gonna
yeah, it's kind of like that, you know, that's how it's gonna go beyond the fiscal year, but move 1, 2, 3, we'll just finalize it tonight.
Is there any more complaints about the, you know, repairs of yards and stuff? Cause I haven't had any, I don't know.
No,
if
it's
anybody else
moving
has.
very good. I think that this company is responding to the people very good.
We
We
get
got some complaints, yeah, but.
one here and there, but they're pretty repaired and they're easy to take care of.
We need a motion.
Okay, we need a motion.
Two.
Approve the meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Move by me. Second by Tim.
Crawford,
Yes.
Sherman, Jones,
Yes.
Belden,
Yes.
AB, yes. 11, budget amendment fiscal, or we just did that. City administration reports.
Okay, I'll go through quickly because I know the rest is tired. Okay, our financial statement on page 1, we have 6.8 million cash on hand in the bank. Go to page 2. The beginning balance on July 1st to the ending balance on April 30th was showing here a loss of 1,286,000. That's with the project. If I take the project numbers, we have a plus number of 707. So in which page 3, we have a 10 million budget, we always built 4, and we have 5 million, but very soon here in a couple of weeks, I'll be paying all these 6, 7, and all that jazz that Chip just brought today. Page 4, the beginning balance and the ending balance of April with the project minus 9,000, without the project, the plus number of 4,000 that we have. The next report is the breakdown of our budget. As you see, all the minus number means we're positive, not minus. We're good with the operating budget. We go to the next report, delinquent account. We have 2 people on the first page with the check mark on the right hand. That take us all the way through page 3 to the next report of delinquent account paid in full. There is no change, and that take us all the way to the end of the report on page 4. And then we go to the next report of payment agreement. We have 4 people without saying names with a check mark on the right hand. The next report is the paid in full payment agreement. We have 3 people. Will be showing the check marks on page 2. We have 1. Page 3, we have another 1. And then you go all the way to page 6, have the last one. That take us through page 7. The next report is budget billing, no change. Report after that is DC's bankrupt, no change. The last report for your information, what we collect from the offset program. It's a set of program, we changed the name. So that is the report that we have this month.
Okay, public forum.
You probably noticed we put a letter in your packets from Delta Dental about the fine program. This is a program that the utility board contributed to back in 2019. Just wanted to show you that it's still doing good things in our community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
thank you guys very much for a very productive discussion.
Thank you.
And deal.
Adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes.